Today, we're talking about success, but maybe not in the way you're used to thinking about it. We're going to dive into what really predicts high achievement. And spoiler alert, it has almost nothing to do with being a genius. This is all based on the groundbreaking work of psychologist Angela Duckworth. And for her, this whole journey started with a comment she heard again and again, her entire life. Yeah, that's what her own father used to say to her. Can you imagine? And, he wasn't trying to be cruel. For him, it was just an observation, a statement of fact. But what Duckworth eventually realized was that he wasn't just wrong. He was asking the completely wrong question. So that one phrase, "you're no genius," actually lit a fire in her. It kicked off this lifelong quest to figure out, okay, if innate talent isn't the secret sauce, then what is? And her search for an answer took her to one of the most demanding, high-stakes environments you can possibly imagine. Which brings us to our first section, the myth of talent. We're going to the United States Military Academy at West Point. Now, this is a place that is literally designed to find the best of the best. They start with thousands of the country's top applicants and whittle that down to just over 1,000 cadets. We're talking valedictorians, team captains, the whole shebang. But here's the thing that's so wild. Despite that incredibly intense selection process, 1 out of every 5 of these super elite cadets drops out before they graduate. And a huge number of them quit during their very first summer, a 7-week ordeal they call Beast Barracks. Sounds fun, right? So the mystery becomes, what separates the ones who make it from the ones who don't? Well, the first clue comes from looking at what doesn't predict success. West Point has this very complex rating called the Whole Candidate Score. It crunches everything: SAT scores, high school rank, leadership potential, physical fitness, all of it. But here's the stunner. That score had 0 power to predict who would quit Beast Barracks. You could have a cadet who leaves and a cadet who stays with the exact same score. It was a total mystery. The real answer came from a completely different test. Duckworth came in with her own short questionnaire, something she called the Grit Scale. And it turned out to be the single most reliable predictor of who would push through that brutal summer. It wasn't about talent, it wasn't about SATs, it was about grit. So, naturally, that leads us to the most important question. What exactly is grit? I mean, it's a word we hear all the time, but Duckworth's research gives it a very specific definition with 2 key essential ingredients. At its core, grit is not a sprint. It's a marathon. It's not just about working hard for a little while. It's stamina. It's about being dedicated to your future day in and day out. Not just for a week, not just for a month, but for years, and relentlessly working to make that future a reality. And it really breaks down into these 2 parts. First, you've got passion. Think of that as your compass. It's that deep, unwavering interest in what you're doing. And then you have perseverance. That's the toughness, the resilience, the discipline to get back up every time you get knocked down. And you can't have one without the other. They're completely intertwined. Now, this is where things get really practical and, frankly, super exciting. Because the best news from Duckworth's work is that grit is not some fixed trait you're just born with. It's something you can actually grow. And it comes down to 4 psychological assets that tend to build on each other. And these 4 things, they usually develop in order. It starts with interest. That's followed by practice. Then comes purpose. And holding it all up from the bottom is hope. So let's just break them down one by one. So everything begins with interest. But here's a common myth. Passion isn't something you just find, like a lightning bolt from the sky. No, it starts with a period of discovery. You gotta play around, try things out, see what clicks. And then you have to actively develop that little spark of interest over a long period of time. You trigger it, and then you have to sustain it. Next up is practice. And listen, this is so important. We are not just talking about mindlessly putting in your 10,000 hours. We're talking about a very specific kind of practice called deliberate practice. This is where you set a very specific goal that's just outside your comfort zone. You concentrate with everything you've got, you get immediate feedback, and then you repeat and refine. It's about systematically attacking your weaknesses, not just coasting on your strength. The third asset is purpose. And the best way to understand this is with the old parable of the 3 bricklayers. You ask them what they're doing. The first guy says, I'm laying bricks. Okay. The second one says, I'm building a church. Better. But the third one, he says, I am building the house of God. That third bricklayer has purpose, the deep belief that his work matters, that it contributes to the well-being of others. And finally, there's hope. But again, this isn't just wishful thinking. It's a specific kind of resilience. Gritty people almost always have what the psychologist Carol Dweck calls a growth mindset. So when they face a setback, they don't think, well, that's it, I've hit my limit. They see failure as temporary. They see it as valuable information that shows them how to grow and get better. Okay, so let's put it all together in our final section. Effort counts twice. Duckworth came up with a really simple but powerful set of formulas that basically give us the math of achievement. They show exactly how talent and grit combine to create real results in the world. So here's the first equation. It's simply talent times effort equals skill. Think about it. Talent is how quickly your skills improve when you try. But by itself, it's just unmet potential, right? It's only when you apply effort, that deliberate practice we talked about, that your raw talent actually becomes a usable skill. But having a skill is not the same as achieving something with it. So here's the second equation. Skill times effort equals achievement. You see that? Effort shows up again. It's the multiplier. It's what makes your skills productive. And this is why Duckworth says effort counts twice. First, to build the skill, and second, to use the skill to actually accomplish something. This is the big idea, the central takeaway. Yes, talent is a factor, but effort is the great multiplier. Effort is what turns your potential into skill, and then it's what turns that skill into tangible accomplishments. Effort is truly the engine of grit. So in the end, you can think of it like this. Talent might be your starting point, but it's grit that determines how far you actually go. It completely reframes our idea of potential, doesn't it? It moves the focus away from our innate gifts and squarely onto our capacity to build our own passion and perseverance. So the only question left to ask yourself is the one you see right here. Where will your grit take you?